how do you find the line between providing emotional support content and it actually being a good game? Instead of going on Candy Crush, I'm going to go on the app because I want to level up my little character that I've developed and keep going and progress through the stages, and hopefully you're getting some benefit out of the process.
Welcome to the Mind Tech Podcast, where we dive deep into the unsolved problems in mental health with the people building technology to solve them, including founders, investors, and experts in technology for the mind. I'm Manu, your host, and today's guest is Frank Thornton-Wood, the co-founder and CEO of AnimaSelf, an app making mental health fun with games and activities that each deliver a specific form of therapy. Mental health care is mostly reactive, meaning people only get help when they've deteriorated. AnimaSelf focuses on helping people think better, feel better, and grow better to prevent any deterioration. This episode is especially unique because Frank and I were in the same year at medical school, so it was great to catch up and discover the gap in the market that he and his team are working to fill. Let's get into it. Hey Frank, wonderful to have you here today. How are you?
I'm great, thanks. Thanks for having me on. It's great to have a chat.
Of course. So let's get straight into it. Your mission at AnimaSelf is to make life a personal playground to think, feel, and grow, which is a wonderful image. What exactly does this personal playground look like, and how do people play here?
Well, I came up with this mission statement for several reasons. Uh, the reason I've put personal playground is because I want this to be a very intimate experience for using this app between the user and themselves, really. I don't want any outside forces involved. I don't want another therapist involved. I want every day when they check into the app for this to be a moment for the user to settle down and just check in with themselves, how they're doing, maybe do some exercises, reflective exercises to engage with that process, and that for that to be a really enjoyable experience for them. The the playground aspect is because I've tried to make this app as fun and engaging and aesthetically pleasing as I possibly can, so that again, it's a pleasure for the user to log in and get going with checking in with themselves, because there's so many apps out there which I've used myself, and I've seen others use, that I think are quite bland. They're scientifically correct. I mean, a lot of them aren't, but let's say they're scientifically correct. Um, but it's just not fun to engage with. So I have quite a significant background, artistically speaking. Before I attended medical school with yourself, I was trying to decide whether I wanted to do medicine or if I wanted to be a fine artist by the sea, painting landscapes, just as an example for you there. In the end, I did decide to go with medicine, but throughout the medical degree, I feel like it ticked a lot of boxes, but I didn't quite get that creative outlet. Um, and I've tried to do that in lots of different ways. Like I've done a marketing job while doing the medical degree, which has slowly built itself up, and that's eventually led to an interest in business and strategy. But the latest outlet for me has been in introducing as much fun and creativity into this app as I physically can. So that's a very long-winded explanation for you for that playground aspect, but I just wanted to give a little bit of an insight into that. And then think, feel, and grow. I mean, I think it speaks for itself, but that's the mental health side. Our app, we're trying to not just help people who have clinical mental health conditions like anxiety and depression, but also people who are subclinical or just going about their day-to-day lives. They don't necessarily have a mental health issue as such, but everyone has ups and downs. Everyone has the potential to go through dark periods of their lives. And I wanted alongside the rest of my team to create something that provided a means of regulation. So that's just a little bit into the mission statement.
Great. Yeah, I think you came full circle there with hitting on the fun, which seems to be a real USP of yours. You've looked at the market, the other things out there are a bit clinical, a bit bland, and that might be part of the gap that you are addressing. Can you give any more insight into this gap, this unmet need, perhaps more detail in the fun aspect, or if there are any other gaps that you think AnimaSelf is solving here?
Yeah, of course. I mean, to talk about the problem a little bit that we're working towards, mental illness is only becoming more common. A lot of that is focused on younger people. There's definitely a stigma attached to mental health still, even though I think it is slowly being unlocked. I mean, I think people are talking about it more, but I still think a lot of young people have a difficulty opening up. And that's one of the reasons we wanted to look at using an app. It's a way to check in with yourself without necessarily needing to make a platform or shout to the world. You can just slowly start to work on yourself in your own time and in your own way. Um, but I think on my journey through healthcare and mental health, I mean, I work as a doctor in the NHS. I've done a liaison psychiatry role as part of one of my rotations. And the key thing that I've noticed, not just on that mental health role, but in every role that I've done, is that mental health care is very difficult to access. Like, people wait very long periods of time to access it. And it's very, you're either on one end of the spectrum where you're struggling a lot. To touch on some trigger topics, like maybe you're suicidal, maybe you don't have insight into your own condition, maybe you're a risk to yourself or other people. um, then you'll receive healthcare and you'll receive support. But if you're anything less than that, I think you have extremely long wait times to look forward to. I think it becomes extremely challenging. And I've seen that with friends and family and with myself. I when I was younger, I was bullied for a time when I started secondary school, and I didn't reach out to anyone. It was only really picked up after 8 months to a year by people noticing things about me, that I'd stopped engaging with school and the world around me. And I've seen that with siblings and friends as well, similar things. And you go out to try and access healthcare, and nothing is necessarily done very quickly. And you can often be very limited in the amount of support you receive, let's say a set number of sessions, but that doesn't necessarily deal with the problem itself. So I guess I wanted to do something to support that. I think apps are a very good solution, and technology is a very good solution, because it's much cheaper to offer than face to face appointments in terms of therapy, whether that's private or via the NHS. Um, it allows you to access it whenever you want. You can go onto it whenever you want and receive support. Is it a replacement for in-person therapy, healthcare? No, not at all. Like, those things are still very important, and they're still necessary for those people who are really, really struggling. But it provides something of a bridge. I want to provide something of a bridge for people in that support. That's one side to it. The other side is we want to help people in the workplace, which is a direction that we want to head. Um, Over time. We want to help employees and the overall employers, because there are significant problems associated in the healthcare in workplace, with people burning out, exhaustion, mental disturbance in their job, and a decline in work performance. and we want to offer support for those employees. And there's also an economic benefit for the employers in making that happen. Um, I think I think a study released by Deloitte showed kind of a 5% return for every £1 invested into staff mental health. And I'm not here to talk about the economics, but that's just one thing that we want to have a look at. But how do we want to deal with some of those problems? I mean, there's two big things. For us, it's A, we want to focus on prevention and early detection rather than treating something after the fact. I think a lot of healthcare is very reactive. You deal with depression or anxiety clinically once it's already there. We want to try and prevent people getting to that point in the first place. And obviously, we're not going to stop everyone, but if we can do something towards that, I think that would be extremely beneficial. Um, and studies have very much shown that younger people affected by mental health, that A, they're becoming younger and younger, and B, um, mental health support is much more effective while people have a greater degree of insight into their own condition. And that insight is shown to deteriorate as the mental health gets worse. So we can offer a lot more help and support early on rather than later on once a problem already exists. And this is seen throughout healthcare everywhere. I mean, there's a much greater focus on prevention prior to a problem in every aspect of healthcare. It just happens that there hasn't been so much for focus in mental health, and we want to make that a priority. Um, the other side is we are looking at integrative mental health support, which is something of a USP for us as an application. We're trying to combine aspects of mindfulness, cognitive behavioral therapy, psychodynamic psychotherapy, because each form of therapy offers a little something a bit different to whoever's using it, whoever's engaging with it. But the healthcare system in the UK, at least as it stands, and actually throughout the world, very much focuses on either or. You go with one option, if that doesn't work, you move on to the next option. But there are benefits to each. With cognitive behavioral therapy, you're working on the vicious cycle of your mind engaging with a thought. With psychodynamic psychotherapy, you're engaging in the root cause, what happened in your childhood, what happened when you were younger with your family and your friends and your school experiences. Um, and mindfulness, it's a matter of really just engaging in the present moment. So they're all very, very different. There's no reason we should be focusing one or the other. And initial research, albeit there's not too much into it, very much does show there are benefits to the combination of them. So one of the things we want to do, because we're quite early stage, we're looking at launching over the next month or two our our app into the market, but we want to start looking at early research projects on providing more validation for this integrated approach, and that will be something that forms part of our roadmap as we go on. So I hope I addressed a few different aspects of your question there.
Absolutely. I think the task of integrating multiple types of therapy is something that actually it would take quite an advanced human therapist to do something like that, to be able to take that flexible approach and adapt according to the user's needs. Do you feel like that is something that is challenging and feasible, or you know, do you have an advanced sort of advisor if who would be able to do that as a human, and are they guiding the way this would be done by an AI?
So our app works in our app doesn't have any human involvement in it. It's
Hmm.
completely done via lessons that we've created, uh, games. We're building a greater degree of artificial intelligence into it over time. Um, I do think it's very much feasible, but we're not going to rush the gun on it. The way we're
Hmm.
starting it is by breaking the app down into 3 modules, and each module will focus on a different form of therapy.
Uh,
And we've structured the app so that, because it's gamified, as I talked about,
yeah.
you get bonuses for doing each of them each day. And so our app is set up that you would try and do a little bit of each one each day, not necessarily overlapping initially, although many of our lessons are structured such that we do try to combine lessons from different modules to a certain degree so that thoughts can be tied together. So I think it is a very tricky thing to do. There are forms of therapy that exist out there that do go about trying to combine some of these already, but we don't want to rush that process.
Mm.
We want people to get benefits from all of them, but we're not looking at kind of putting them together too early on. We'll see where things go, but initially we're keeping them separate.
That makes sense from a feasibility standpoint, giving three separate exercises to give three small doses of each of those each day so that people can reap the benefits without being put at risk of the technology maybe not because that's a huge demand on the technology if they were to have to be if it had to be one thing that was doing all three, but giving them three things that do each of those, it's it's a lot more reliable, I think, in that sense. So that's good to know. I also enjoyed hearing you speak about taking a proactive approach rather than a reactive approach. And I'm sure you may have heard of the analogy in the world of entrepreneurship of a painkiller versus a vitamin, where a painkiller is kind of like a must have, it takes away someone's pain, whereas a vitamin is kind of like a nice to have. It's not something that's going to take away someone's pain, but over time it may improve their quality of life. It just the immediate impact isn't so apparent. And of course, it's much easier selling a painkiller to relieve someone's pain than it is to sell a vitamin to prevent illness in the future. How do you anticipate overcoming this obstacle? I know you have a background in strategy, so I'm sure you've thought about this because we need more proactive services and we need to do a better job of demonstrating the value of those. So, how does AnimaSelf hope to do this?
So how do we intend to go about providing preventative support? Is that the question?
Not providing, but making the value proposition strong, where you can, you're not just selling a nice to have, but you're selling something that feels like it's a must have, even though it's not a painkiller, if you know what I mean.
I see what you're saying. Okay. So in terms of how we go about pitching ourselves, we're trying to very much push towards this is something everyone needs. We're trying to push the idea that for too long, mental health has been brushed under the carpet, something that I think we all know. Well, not everyone, but I'm sure you know. And introduce the idea that mental health needs to be regulated. We need to all regulate our own mental health um, with the support of everyone around us and our communities. And that is very much, I think, a new idea, or new at least within Gen Z, within the modern day, because previously it's not something that's ever really been dealt with. Uh, and as an app, I think that's what we're directly trying to target. We're trying to provide something that allows you to regulate your health yourself in your own way each and every day, so that you don't spiral, and so that you can manage the ups and downs of everyday life. So that's how we're pitching ourselves. We're pitching ourselves as a necessity to manage the ups and downs.
It's definitely needed for sure. Definitely more of this is needed, and it's it's something that I hope people feel like a painkiller sense of urgency to something that has a vitamin like benefit, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But humans aren't always the best at delaying that sort of gratification. So embedding it as a daily habit, yeah, that's
Yeah.
one way to do it for sure.
And
Yeah,
that's
go
how
on.
I think that's why we've tried to make the app as fun to use as possible as well, and
Mm,
gamified,
yep.
so that, as you say, obviously it's hard to maintain a habit, and we're trying to make that easy as it possibly can
Hmm.
be, so that, you go onto the app initially because, oh, that sounds like a good idea. I don't know if I'll keep doing it, but I'll download the app for the first time at least. And then engaging with it and actually finding that was, I've got a reason to go back, just like I have a reason to go onto Candy Crush because I'm bored when I'm sat on the toilet. Like I want, instead of going on Candy Crush, I'm going to go on the app because I want to level up my little character that I've developed and keep going and progress through the stages, and hopefully you're getting some benefit out of the process.
Now that's a wonderful idea. Do you think AnimaSelf will be as fun and, dare I say, addictive as Candy Crush?
I think we've got a way to go to get to Candy Crush or equivalent.
Yeah.
But I mean, many of the things Candy Crush does, we've tried to integrate into our app.
Mm,
Um, that we, in lots of small ways, we've tried to make the app addictive to use, which may sound like a negative. I mean, I read your article on addiction. It was, I think I sent you a message about it. It was really, really good. And it may, I don't mean it as a negative in this sense. I want people to get addicted to their own mental health care.
mm.
Maybe flipping over a very negative thing into a more positive thing. I
Yeah,
mean,
it's about harnessing that human nature that we have to feel addictive in some ways, and trying to channel that through good things, right? It's not something to try to forget about our addictive nature. It's something to tap into for the good and try to eliminate for the bad. And I think that's a really realistic way of engaging people in proactive care by doing it in ways that people are already engaged in, but currently in ways that aren't good for them. So trying to harness that in ways that are good for them, that's really cool, and it makes me very excited to try out some of the games when they come out. In particular, I think this has a great potential for young people who, of course, play more games on their phones than perhaps older people who progress onto stages of life where we don't get as much free time to play games. But arguably, it's the young people who need it more, especially because they have the rest of their lives ahead of them, going through stressful periods. Is this something you're thinking about in terms of a target audience?
oh yeah, definitely. I mean, our app can be used by anyone, but we are definitely focusing on a younger audience, not necessarily children. We'd be looking at 16 to 30, roughly, in terms of age, because these are the people who are championing mental health. These are the people who have brought mental health into the limelight, and we are starting to talk about it more and more. And we're hoping these will be the people who also champion our app. And as you say, our app is designed to support a younger audience who are very app savvy, who would be interested in playing games, who, just people who are going to engage with us, really. So our app is very much focused on this younger group for that reason, and also the reason that mental health is becoming increasingly common. A third of people in Gen Z, so 16 to 25 age group, are experiencing symptoms of anxiety and depression, which is extremely high. And that's more than it has affected age groups prior to this. And therefore, they seem like the right group for us to target so that we can do something to try and work on the problem.
It makes me wonder, do you frame yourself as a mental health app that has games or as a gaming app that has benefits to your mental health? Have you considered how each of those play out?
Well, currently we pitched ourselves as a mental health app that is gamified. It's definitely a very interesting thought, though.
Mm,
Uh, I mean, I don't know what kind of comparisons exist. I mean, you look at things like, cryptocurrency, where you get coins by taking more steps to keep you active. So it's almost like a hidden benefit that exists there. And it's definitely an interesting idea to make the games the absolute focus with yeah, it's a very interesting idea,
yeah.
and it very well may be something we move towards as we start to get customer feedback on what we're offering, because I think right now, while our app has many gamification features, our content is definitely more geared towards mental health front and center. We've got lots of videos that introduce a core concept and then games to kind of test what you're doing over time. And we wanted it to very much be a therapeutic app at the front and center. But I think, we haven't had widespread customer feedback yet, so we'll have to harness that as things go on.
Mm. I totally agree because if one of the key factors for your USP is for it to be fun, and the fact that you're trying to do something that's proactive rather than reactive, which means you have to do an even better job of engagement than if you were to do something reactive. I feel like all of that compounds, as on top of the fact that no one is doing it well, right? There are games for mental health, but they are very very basic, and you can tell that it's not really, people wouldn't play that game just because it's a game. It would be very much with the knowledge that, okay, this is like the most fun way of doing mental health. Um, so that's it's an interesting angle, isn't it? Especially, yeah, because it's not really being done. I guess that opens the door then to really trying to collaborate with game designers and game developers, which could be really fun in itself as well, and allows you even more creative freedom, which you mentioned is a yearning desire of yours. So it lines up
Yeah,
well.
yeah, and I think the interesting point comes as well where the line is, like where how do you find the line between providing emotional support content and it actually being a good game, and how do you avoid that being too childish, maybe, to provide one way
Mm,
of putting it. I mean, I can think of ways of making a fun game for a young child, um, in a similar way to, you have educational TV content with Muppets or etc. But to engage with a slightly older audience, I think that would be a challenge, but a very worthwhile challenge, um,
yeah,
to
if
come
if
up
you're
with something.
definitely, if your target audience is 16 to 30, then all you need to do is look at the games that 16 to 30-year-olds are playing, right? And that's what they're playing. That's what they're happy to play. So then you can base your games off of that. Really, of course, the most when we do think of games, you're right. We think of young children playing playground, right? Um, but it's it's if it's for a 16 to 30-year-old, then just check out what they're already playing.
Yeah,
Which I would definitely it makes you feel good about playing games as well, right? If you think, okay, yeah, I can play this because it's good for me, so no one can tell me, it's like making vegetables taste good, if you know what I mean. So
yeah.
um, definitely a worthy cause there. I just wanted to ask as well about your business model of pay what you can. It
Hmm.
seems that you very much value access, which is fantastic. Um, for people listening who haven't checked it out already, there's the £9 mid range pricing tier, there's the £4 one, and am I right in saying there's a £14 one as well, where if people who really support and really love the app feel like they want to support it and keep it going, then the more people that pay 14 means that there's more people who can pay for £4 a month and benefit without having such a financial burden, which for so many people is a huge obstacle in mental health. Um, and I think this pricing is incredibly noble for sure. Um, and it will be very interesting to see what the percentages are when you have launched. So, can you share how your values have driven this and how you've managed to decide on that trade-off between access and potentially greater financial returns, and what that might mean for AnimaSelf's potential to generate more resources more quickly, to create more engaging content more quickly? Because there's some trade-offs here, right? So what was your thought process behind all that?
Well, why did we want to make things as affordable as they could be? Well, that's because I think mental health is very expensive. If you want to get in person therapy, you're looking at £50 at a minimum per session, all the way up to 150, £200 for a single session. And that's just not something that's financially viable to most people, to be honest. It's extremely, extremely expensive. The other option is the NHS, but as I've already mentioned, and as we've already talked about, that's you face very long wait times. Your number of sessions is often very limited, and you come off the back of it with problems that still exist. You may have dealt with the crisis, but that doesn't mean you're not going to relapse, and it doesn't mean that you're not going to still struggle. So that's why we went about the pay what you can model. In terms of how it's financially sustainable, we are relying on numbers, and by providing, well, our model is structured that no matter what you pay, you will have access to all the mental health support content, because we don't want to make this a system where you pay more to access decent content. That's not what we're trying to do. But how do we make it financially sustainable? A, volume, um, and B, we are looking towards moving into the B2B or the business focused sector as an additional source of income on top. And hopefully that will provide a source of revenue that allows us to continue to provide a pay what you can model to our end consumer on the App Store. And hopefully that will provide a kind of a good circle that allows us to continue to provide revenue through and provide increasingly good content as time goes on. I can't promise that things won't get a little more expensive over time, but we very much want to still focus on keeping things as good as possible for each individual that wants to use our app. So that's our plan as things stand, and we want to use that end business consumer as a way to sustain it.
Excellent. Sounds a little bit like Robin Hood, where you do what you can to keep the barriers as low as possible for the people greatest in need, by leveraging B2B, which of course doesn't incur any significant financial burden on any one individual, but to an organization to whom, of course, there is economic gain, as you mentioned, with soft ROIs like in the culture. If a company is able to share with its employees a mental health service, then that has a soft ROI of improving the workplace culture, making them feel like they're cared for, as well as hard ROIs by reducing absenteeism and people actually leaving the job as well. So um, it's great how you found a synergy there, and definitely wishing you all the very best with that. Can't wait to
Thank
try it out myself.
thank
Um,
you. I mean, it's
for Yeah,
interesting and oh, sorry to cut you off.
no worries.
It interestingly, like if you look at the financial return for organizations, and it is supportive of what we're doing. If you look at the return on investment for proactive organization-wide investments into mental health, you're looking at, just to put a number on it, £5.60-ish return for each £1 invested. Whereas if you look at a reactive measure, as we've discussed in detail, you're looking at more like £3, £3.50. So it's significantly more benefit that you'll see from that preventative measure. And then the other side to the coin is that if you look at individual support versus support for multiple employees, you're looking at a £7.30 return for each £1 for an organization-wide proactive directive versus a £3.50 return for individual psychotherapy with a trained practitioner. So there's a few things there that really support what we're trying to do, all meaning that we can still benefit the end consumer at the end of the day.
Brilliant. That's one of the most important things, of course, in mental health, anything to do with health, but in particular mental health, which experiences a lot of the inequalities in society, such as worse outcomes for people in poorer communities and such, which this app, AnimaSelf, works towards overcoming, which is great to hear. Frank, how can people support and get involved with AnimaSelf?
I mean, you can support it in lots of ways. If you go to our website or go to our social media, whether that's Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, you'll find a link allowing you to subscribe to our newsletter. And that's mainly important because you'll get all the news associated with what we're doing. And you'll be updated regarding our launch. You can be an early subscriber with us. As I mentioned, we will be launching within the next month or two because everything's pretty much ready to go. We're just signing the legal paperwork, making sure we're not doing anything dodgy, and within a month or two we should be there. So you'll get a significant discount by signing up with us early. I mean, we'll be free for a fair period starting anyway, so join us. You won't have to pay anything initially for at least 3 months. You won't have to pay anything. Just see what it's like, see if you like what we're doing. Um, how else can you support us? If you want to get involved, join our team. If this is something that interests you, you can email careers@animaself.me. There's more information about that on our website. If you want to have a chat with me, go to my LinkedIn, send me an email at frank@animaself.me. I'm happy to have a chat, talk about it more, whatever you want, really. Yeah, there's just a few things to get involved, but come to our social media, come to our website. There's more information there.
Brilliant. Also, getting access early means that you get a chance to give feedback, which will guide the product development, and you may be able to make a contribution to a mental health app that will impact so many. So, Frank, it's been a pleasure to discuss all the exciting work that you and your team are doing at AnimaSelf to make mental health fun, and wishing you all the best. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having this chat with me. It's been great.
If you have an interesting take on anything we discussed, feel free to share your 2 cents in the comments. And if you're feeling kind, then leave a review, which would be hugely appreciated. If you're interested in learning a little more about your mind and how you can get the most from your most powerful resource, you can check out the Mind Explored, an email newsletter I send each week with an insight into your mind and a tool to make it healthier. All you need is in the description. Thank you for your interest in the mind and how technology can meet its needs. Until next time, goodbye.